everybody, Austin with The Real Seal, back again to answer questions that you have about carbon fiber. Starting with, what is carbon fiber and what's it used for? Carbon fiber is a series of threads of carbon mixed with other possible materials. We use Kevlar in order to create a high-strength product that is used in all sorts of applications and foundation repair to stop the inward movement of foundation walls. This is typically seen in a bowing kind of movement. Think a pregnant woman where your wall is actually bowing inwards towards the inside of the house. This usually happens from exterior pressures and from lack of connection or strength of the wall itself. So how does it work? Carbon fiber is applied with an epoxy onto your wall. The first thing that's done is a technician will clear the area and actually grind down the wall in order to expose the aggregate of the concrete. Now this is important because the epoxy, just like an epoxy floor, bonds to the aggregate of the concrete, not the very surface of it. Then the carbon fiber is applied onto the wall with epoxy, soaks the carbon fiber and attaches it to that foundation wall. Now most carbon fibers will typically have two anchor points apart from their bond with the wall. The first will be the top anchor. This particular anchor will hook behind the sill plate, which is that back board that goes behind your joists. It can also hook onto the joist itself, and there's even a connection that hooks it straight onto the sill plate. And that'll help connect the carbon fiber to the top portion of your wall and subfloor, which helps hold everything together. Your bottom plate will now hook this and your carbon fiber into the footing of your foundation. This will allow the carbon fiber to have a good strong anchor point so that when that wall tries to move, it is now anchored at the bottom, at the top, and it has tensile strength all the way down the wall, so the wall will not have the ability to move. In fact, it ties the entire wall together by making the 5 components of your wall one piece. The footing of the foundation, the stem wall, or the actual wall of the foundation that you see, the sill plate, the piece of wood that sits on top of your foundation wall, the joists, that's what your floor sits on, those 2x6s that run 16 inches apart, and then on top of that, your subfloor. Once all those pieces are fully connected together, your wall can't move. Another question we get is, how can carbon fiber be stronger than steel? I mean, look at it. I'm bending it with just my hands. I'm not that strong of a person. Well, once the epoxy bonds with it, it's that epoxy and carbon fiber combo with the tensile strength that makes it so incredibly hard. It's so lightweight, but so strong compared to its weight that it has more tensile strength than thick steel. So that steel, although it feels good and we can't bend it, the forces of a foundation wall could possibly, or the forces of your house down on your central I-beam can move that beam and bend it. And there's nothing you can really do to strengthen that beam. Carbon fiber, however, will go onto a wall, strengthen it, and be stronger than if you applied I-beams to that foundation wall. Physics works. Now you may have had someone out to your house who's already given you a quote on carbon fiber, and something you may ask when you see their proposal is, what determines how far apart the carbon fiber straps are on the wall? I mean, if you've seen other projects, you could see that the straps aren't always the same distance on the wall. So there's two main things that go into the spacing of the carbon fiber on the wall. The main thing is how much the wall is moved in. If the wall is moved in only up to 2 inches, you can get spacing of 4 to 5 feet along that wall. That will give you enough strength. But if the wall is between 2 and 3 inches of movement, that extra inch is giving way more strength and force to deal with. And in that case, the straps are going to have to be moved closer together, 3 to 4 feet, in order to stop the movement of that wall. Another factor in determining the straps' distance apart is how that wall is connected at the top. For instance, if the wall doesn't have your joist sitting right on top of it, but instead a knee wall, and there's framing going up, and then joist on top of that, well, you're going to have to space those straps a little farther, strap the whole length of the wall, so that those straps actually have tensile strength. Now, hearing all of this might prompt you to ask yourself, well, how do I know if I have an issue? The telltale signs are easy enough for any homeowner to spot. You can look on the outside of your foundation wall And if you have brick above for your siding, there'll be a telltale horizontal crack in the brick. And then at the end of that crack on either end, you might see some stair-stepping crack down to the corners of the foundation. This is caused because as that wall moves in, it causes the brick as well above to bow, which will create a horizontal crack where you will see that movement of the brick. That same horizontal crack, you can also see it in the basement. You can look at the wall, and if there's a big horizontal crack where at the ends goes down towards the corners, that wall has some inward movement that caused a crack. Let's say most of that wall is finished, and you've got a sump pump on one side and utility room on the other, and you can at least see the last few feet of the wall. Well, you can see on the last few feet of the wall, if there are cracks at the bottom corners coming up towards the center of the wall on both corners, that's a sign you may have some wall movement. It'd be a good idea to take out some drywall to confirm this. You can look outside again, and where the foundation wall meets your siding or brick, whatever is there, at the corner of your foundation, those two will line up exactly. But in the bowing wall, as you move further and further in towards the middle, that wall is moving in, and it bows greatest in the middle of the wall. So in the middle of the wall, you can end up sticking your finger under the siding, and you can actually measure from there how far that wall has bowed. But those cracks, horizontal cracking, the difference in the siding and the foundation wall, or cracking in the brick above, are really telltale signs that your foundation wall needs some attention. What is a shear on a foundation wall, and how does carbon fiber fix it? A shear on a foundation wall is where the top part of your foundation has moved, but a portion of the bottom, usually 6 to 8 inches, stayed still. So you've got a foundation wall that kind of cracked off of itself. The way that this is fixed is by filling in that entire shear, the space between the wall where it broke off and it didn't, with a hydraulic cement, and then applying your carbon fiber straps as normal, although probably a little bit closer together to handle the excess pressures on that wall. Once you get that all done, it's just as normal carbon fiber is. Will come with a lifetime warranty and will stop the inward movement of that shear. And as we always care about, we want to know if the repair is aesthetic. Is the carbon fiber going to look good when we're done? Carbon fiber actually looks very sharp. Although if it's something that you don't want to see, it's easily remedied. You could take a 200 grit sandpaper and sand over the carbon fiber strap and epoxy once it's all dried and cured, and just paint it. It'll blend in with the wall and you'll hardly notice it's there. And then you can obviously finish right over it without losing any of your finished space and still have a strong, supportive foundation wall. And as we all like to know, what's the warranty associated with carbon fiber? Carbon fiber generally comes with a lifetime warranty against inward movement. If the wall were to move inwards even a quarter of an inch, a contractor will come back out and take steps at their cost to remedy it. Most often this means adding additional straps to support that wall, or looking at where the straps were connected to see if they need some repair as well. Sometimes the sill plate on top of the foundation wall isn't bolted into the wall, and a contractor can miss that that's happening, and then they'll hook into the sill plate, and the sill plate just comes right off. So with the lifetime warranty, you get the assurance that that foundation wall isn't going to move any further, and you can even transfer that warranty to new homeowners. And finally, if you have any questions not covered in this video, feel free to give us a call over at The Real Seal, where you know, not everything's better when wet.